All right. Hello. Welcome everyone to our Mindset Monday and podcast for the Alignment Tribe. I'm Christine. I am thrilled to welcome our very special guest this week. One of my favorite things lately has been seeing the wins inside our program, Align and Design Your Life. And every Friday, we ask the members of the community to post their wins, in part because it helps the subconscious mind to get in tune to noticing the wins, because we have so many wins in our life, big and small. And for many of us, especially as entrepreneurs, we love to set goals, we love to set outcomes, and often we're so thinking about the next step, the next phase, that we often don't take time to celebrate what is and all the great things that are here for us. And Cheryl Dornberg, our special guest today, has just posted some really beautiful wins in our group that are really heartfelt. And that was the reason I wanted her to come on to the Mindset Monday today and share with us her experience. And then when I asked her to share with me a little bit more about her experience, I was absolutely blown away with her response. And I know it's something that's been resonating with a few people that we've shared it with outside the community, just in, getting people excited to come in and hear today's Mindset Monday. So Cheryl, I'm really honored that you're here today. I am so grateful that you said yes to yourself and to your business and to your life by joining Align and Design Your Life. You've been an amazing contributor to our community, and you've really led with just honesty and vulnerability and like a willingness to be open to so many possibilities, to not just for your business, but for your life. And so thank you for once again saying yes and coming on to Mindset Monday and the podcast. And I'd love to hear a little bit before we get into, your experience. Please share with everybody who you are, what you do, and who you serve.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be asked, and it's always nice to share. You never think you have anything to share, but it's nice to hear other people's journeys. And so I've actually been an entrepreneur for almost 25 years now. And I always say I was kind of an accidental entrepreneur. I never really thought I'd have my own business. So I'm a little different out of the mold than people that are like gung-ho the whole time. So a little more in the subdued side of it. Mm-hmm. But I actually started out doing cooking meals for people. So I did prepared meals for people for a long time. I did catering. And then about 9 years ago, I decided to start teaching people to cook themselves, because I thought, really, that's the only way to gain your health is through the kitchen. I truly believe that a healthy lifestyle begins in the kitchen, and we need to get there more. So I help empower individuals to make better food choices and to cook more from scratch so they can take control of their health, especially if they're trying to prevent, manage, or even reverse chronic lifestyle diseases. That's my main focus. And so I really believe that if they get in the kitchen, and that's the funnest and the most delicious way to a good health, just by making simple, nutritious meals. So much more practical than a lot of people do when they're trying to get you to eat healthier. They just hand you a list of foods. But I really try to, what do you do with that list? How do you get in the kitchen? How do you make it work for your lifestyle?
Yeah, I think a lot of us take for granted that people have learned how to cook as kids. And so often that doesn't really happen. And not necessarily because maybe your parents didn't cook at home, but oftentimes I think parents they're busy, they have a lot going on, they're working, they're doing so many things. Like throwing together the meal and just getting it on the table is faster and more efficient than having your children be a part of that process. So like oftentimes kids, I know a lot of people my age our moms cooked, mostly the moms, the dads grilled, and the food was like there, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you figured out how that process worked. And I love that you bring it back to those basics and show people, because kids are actually way more capable of cooking than we give them credit for. My mom let me cook when I was really young. Like I was baking by myself by the time I was 10 or 11. And my sister already has her kids cooking with her, and they're able to chop vegetables, and, they know how meals get put together, and they're 8 and 11, which I think is so great. So I love that you take that angle with it and really teach people the skills, because that's really empowerment, right? If someone can create for themselves.
Right. And just to explain that, we've gone so much towards convenience and quickness. And I think
Mm-hmm.
even people that tell me that they cook, it's really not cooking. It's throwing a box of this or a can of this, or they don't realize that the stuff that goes into there is really harming them more than, they're doing the best they can, because
Mm-hmm.
the world of nutrition and food is very confusing out there, as we all know. And, it's hard to know who to trust and what to actually believe anymore. So, like I said, I really try to meet them where they are and work with them, because even if you don't like to cook, we can still have you eat healthier, right? You don't
Right.
have to make these, you don't have to be in the kitchen for 3 or 4 hours, or if you have arthritis, and you can't chop, we can still get you to do things. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So tell me, before you came to the Alignment Tribe, I know that you were kind of in a place with your business where you were making some decisions about where to go next. So when you and I first connected, and even before we connected, what were your dreams for your business? What were your hopes for it? What were your desires for where you wanted to go?
well, I've always enjoyed teaching people. And then when I went and I received my culinary nutrition certification a couple years ago. So once I did that, I really was full in on the food as medicine, and that, I needed to start bringing people on this bandwagon. So I slowly started to transition my business then, but it was truly all in person. And because I was following other leads of other cooking, establishments, cooking classes, it became very social. I mean,
Mm.
I was really trying to teach them, but then I figured out they were all like coming and just wanted to eat and have fun. And that's fine. But, I was spending hours at the grocery store and hours cleaning up and hours of this. And I really then couldn't do the education part. So in 2019, I was really trying to figure out a way to change that and to touch people on a more regular basis. If they only came once every 6 months for some special occasion, I really wasn't able to help them like I thought I could. So I started transitioning to a membership portal on my website and started changing up my classes. And then COVID hit. And for me, it was a blessing,
Hmm.
because it gave me the excuse to pull away from the in-person classes, to step back, to say, what is possible. And although I had dreamed about doing virtual classes and doing things online, I had never done it because the busyness of being in person
Hmm.
hurt. And so when early in COVID, I started, trying to figure out, and a lot of programs were saying you had to have this big, massive program. You had to be this coach that charged thousands of dollars. And it just wasn't settling right with me. And I had bought into a couple, business programs. I was following some people, and that's actually how I found you in another group. And when I heard you speak, I was like, it's mindset. I never realized how much it was
Mm.
the mindset, and it was an individual thing. And I didn't realize how much I was trying to, I consider myself a very independent person, but in this case, I thought I had to follow everybody else's leads, because I was trying to find clients, and I thought that I had to, do what they wanted instead of going deep in and doing what I felt was right. Nobody's doing what I'm doing. So I'm thinking, well, it must not work, right? Instead of saying,
Oh,
instead of feeling this is great, I need to, pursue it.
yeah. Instead of the perspective of no one's doing this
Mhm.
because it's unique, it's different. It just sparked for me that the ideas in the health and wellness world, that the sort of one size fits all, there's a lot of people who think if
Mhm.
you just do everything the way I've done it, then you'll have the
Mhm.
success I had. I think that happens in the business world too. People create a program, or they create a course or a path, and they say, well, this worked for me, so this is what you should do. And you were finding that, just like with nutrition, we're all different,
Mhm.
right? We all have different and unique expressions of what we want to do with our business, how we want to serve. So what were you struggling with the most when you were coming to this realization that like what you had was different and what you were finding out there wasn't really fitting with your personality and what you wanted to do?
Well, it just was a frustration. It was an overwhelm. It was always doubting myself and trying to find that right path. I kept waiting for something else, something to come at me. So, I told you when I was, telling you some of the biggest impacts I've had, I realized I was just standing back and waiting for things to happen. So it was like I was watching this play or this game of my life, but I wasn't really in it, right? So I was letting everybody else make up my decisions and I was doing everything for everyone, but I wasn't doing anything for myself. And I think a big part of it was because the people I saw that were being successful were out there. And that wasn't me. I'm not like I'm not the quarterback, and I'm not the one that's going to get all the limelight. And I don't want all the limelight. I'm kind of that, even in what I do with my nutrition type stuff, I'm the one that's going to help you slug through day after day, the daily meals, right? It's not like a lot of cooking classes. You're going to learn how to make croissants or pie or whatever. And those are fun, but they're not going to get you through. So I'm like taking the mundane. And so I'm the support, I always considered myself a very support person, and not realizing that actually support people are just as much in the game and just as important, right? Like the field goal kicker is just as important as that quarterback, and he only comes in once in a while and just supports people. So, it was just kind of being directed by others, I guess.
Yeah. And so what changed for you? I know you just mentioned that you've talked about some of those changes that happen. Like what in particular helped you to see this, that you were kind of waiting on the sidelines, but that what you have to offer is so unique, it's so special, it's so needed, that you were like, you know what, I'm going to come in and be the star of my own show, right? Like maybe it's not being the star of a show that someone else has created, like the way that we think things should be, but coming in and saying, this is the way I want to show up. What was that like for you?
Well, that came through, Align and Design Your Life, and just the realigned sessions and the way that, you help us to reframe things. And I guess I never realized it was such a structure thing, that I was just reacting to something that had been my entire life. And I've always been a very like rigid kind of rule type person. And, and I think that limited me. And just by, the exercises we do and by finally just saying what's inside of me, I think the biggest thing is what you stress on choosing, right? It was like, make those goals, make this, do that. And I'm like, I never felt attached to that.
Yeah.
But when you said you have to choose something, and I had to really think deeply, I'm like, choose, huh? And it took me several months. I mean, I was one of those that struggled, I was like, I can't just because I don't know, I don't have any just because. But, I really reflected back in and just started seeing that little light. And then I also saw that I could do it my way.
Yeah.
The one thing about Align and Design Your Life and the program and the group is everybody is different. And I didn't feel pressured into doing it the same way. Like you said, with the nutrition, you have to go with somebody that's lived it and done it, but you also have to go with somebody who's going to tweak it for you. I have my own health regimen and eating regimen, and I'm flat out tell people that's not going to work for you, right? But I work with them to try to figure out what works for them. And I think that was the thing, is that the group and you and the coaches really help to make it more individual.
Yeah, because the outcomes that well, thank you, first of all. And, it's the outcomes that we choose. And I see this a lot. This was the same for me as it's been, I think, across the board for our community, that we weren't told growing up that we got to choose I mean, when you're really little, people are like, what do you want to be? And like, you can say, I want to be a unicorn astronaut. And people are like, that's great. Enjoy your flight. But then you get a little older and people are like, no, but really, what are you going to be? And it starts getting into this very, like, I'm using air quotes, practical way of looking at life. And especially for women, I think we're given a lot of direction overtly and covertly about what we're supposed to want, out of life, out of our business, out of our career, out of family, out of all these things. Those are the structures we talk a lot about, that as we get to certain stages in our life, we begin to question those. Like, does this really fit my personality? Is this what I really want? And it takes a lot of courage to go inside and ask yourself, are these the outcomes I want? Or is this the outcome I think I'm supposed to want? Right? All the business experts are telling me I'm supposed to create this thing and sell it for this price and do these things. But is that what I really want? Like, is that what success would look like for me? And when we can really tune in and ask ourselves that question and get honest with the answer, it's almost like, like the weight just lifts and you're like, you know what I want? I want this for me and I want these outcomes. And I remember when that happened for you and you were, talking about it with me and talking about it in the group. And you were just like, I get to choose whatever I want. I get to make the program I want. I get to price it the way I want. It can be what I want. And what is that like for you now? Like, now that you know that it's your choice and you get to pick the outcomes, like, what's possible for you going forward?
Well, I've kind of gotten rid of all those other expectations. So I feel like I'm kind of like at the clean slate part right now. I mean,
Nice.
I have the stuff I'm working on, but there's still work to be done with those outside forces. And I think having an established business before in this case is almost harder because it's still very hard for me. I can't really make a clean break for that, just because of a lot of different factors and because of the reputation. So when people know you in one way for a very long time, so you have to be careful how you switch that and how you change that up. But things that were very difficult conversations that I used to have or needed to have, I don't find so hard anymore. I am like the queen of avoiding conflict. I really am the peacemaker, and anything that will make people upset, I don't like. And so that was driving a lot of things too. I think I got myself into a lot of situations because I didn't want to say no or but with this new change and with this new direction, I'm more confident, I guess, in saying that, because maybe before part of it was that fear of conflict, but it was also maybe that lack of clarity. So if you have no clarity and you really don't know, then you're like, well, I don't know. You have no conviction to say it, right? So once you have that inside, you can fight through your own demons and your own, hesitations for things, because now you have it deep inside.
I love that. That's such a great point. The confidence really starts with clarity. Like, how can you confidently, move in the direction of your dreams if you don't know what the dream really is, like what you want, And I think knowing that, having clarity about the outcomes that you want to create, of course, then you get to those moments where you have to make a decision, or you have to have a conversation, or you have to do something that's outside what's comfortable and familiar. And it becomes a little easier each time because that's moving you towards the outcomes that you want. Like, there's purpose, right, behind those choices and those conversations and those decisions, that without that driving purpose, it can be really easy to be like, nah, maybe I don't have to say that today, or sure, I'll say yes when I don't really feel like doing it. And if though, that those decisions aren't going to move you towards what you want, it's a whole lot easier, right, to make the choices that align with you. That's brilliant. I love that. So if you could go back in time and give yourself advice from 3 months ago, what would that be?
Just to do it, to go out and put yourself out in the world, because the more I found that the more you're hesitating, it just gets worse and worse. And just doing the small little things give you that confidence that we were just talking about, and it propels you. And I think we get, especially me, because I am more of a logical type thinker, I get too in my head. And so I, have gone through every single scenario. And, I used to pride myself in coming up with, I have to know what could happen. I never really thought of myself as a perfectionist, but I had to know what would happen. So I guess in a way it is, but now it's like, just put it out there. And when I've done it, it's like, wow, that's really, it either clarifies that I'm doing it right, or it's telling me a different direction. And I think for people that struggle with that maybe are, more the personality like I am, the introverted and kind of, behind the scenes, to do that, you have to put yourself in a smaller group. I think today it's very hard because you don't want to put yourself out there in this huge, massive, audience. So I think by finding smaller groups to do that and building that, it's been a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So, anything else that you'd like to share with us? How can people find you and connect with you?
Well, my website is mrsdornbergs.com. And then I'm on Facebook, Mrs. Dornberg's Culinary Experience, or my Cheryl Dornberg. My Instagram is Mrs. Dornberg, and Twitter. So it's kind of funny that Mrs. Dornberg, when I rebranded quite a few years ago, the company that was helping me said, well, you're in food, and everybody like Mrs. Fields and Mrs., all those things that Mrs., Mrs. whatever, it makes people think of food. So they did that. And when they first did that, I'm like, I'm not Mrs. Dornberg, I'm Cheryl, and it took me a really long time. And then after a couple of years, it's like, yeah, I'm Mrs. Dornberg. So now even in all of my stuff that I talk about, my newsletter, it's all Mrs. Dornberg, because it is that, kind of that persona.
Well, sure. I mean, it makes you feel like home, right? That, and it's unique. I don't know many people who, these days where our culture is so casual that it's a rarity to be a Mrs.
But it doesn't feel formal. It just kind of,
No,
it is. It's play.
cute.
And I mean, that's what everybody likes to, I used to tell people, just call me Cheryl. And they're like, oh no, Mrs. D, Mrs. Dornberg. And I tell my husband, I said, it's like marriage security, right? Because it's his name. So I wouldn't go back. So anyway, it's been fun, but that's kind of a little funny story.
I love it. That's so cute. Yeah, it's definitely good security for him. It's the, and I bet he gets some great meals too. So he's not going anywhere. Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing with us your experience and for being so honest and open with not just our talk today, but with your whole time with us. I know that you've been able to connect with some of the other women in our group, outside the group. And, I know that for so many of us, especially in this digital world, especially during COVID, during quarantine, and as a solo entrepreneur, there's a tendency for us to feel like we're alone, right? We're doing business alone. We're often in our spaces alone. And to know that you don't actually have to do life and business by yourself, that there's community, like you said, finding that group, a small group so you can feel really a part of and feel connected is so important. And I think it's even more important than it's ever been to have that community. So I just want to say thank you for being a part of our community and for coming and sharing your experience with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being with us on Mindset Monday. We're live every Monday at 2:00 inside the Facebook group, The Alignment Tribe. And you can also listen to our amazing case study interviews and other great tips on how to create and choose a life and business that you love on our podcast, The Alignment Tribe. So thank you so much, and we'll see you all next week.